All right, guys, I got a special treat for you today. I was actually a guest on Harry Spaight's podcast, Sales Made Easy, and we had such a great conversation on there about core values and the way that I operate my sales teams today. I really wanted you guys to be able to listen into this. So check out the guest interview and enjoy the show.
Welcome to Building Great Sales Teams, a show dedicated to making sales teams tick, tick, boom. Great sales teams are not recruited, they are built, block by block. Let's get to work.
What is a good word, ladies and gentlemen? Today with me, I have visiting us from the beautiful state of Texas is Doug Mitchell. He's the president of Argenta Field Solutions. I got to say that right. Argenta Field Solutions. Oh my goodness. Can we stop and start all over again? No, we don't do that. We're going to start right now again. So Douglas Mitchell is visiting us, the Sales Made Easy podcast. He's the president of Argenta Field Solutions. He's a husband and father of three. He's been in sales and sales leadership for over a decade. And right now he is not only working, helping others with solar, he's helping sales teams to develop. And he is a podcast host as well of the podcast called Building Great Sales Teams. So Doug Mitchell, welcome to the Sales Made Easy podcast.
Thanks for having me, Harry. This is great. When I had you on my podcast, I didn't expect the invite, so I really appreciate it.
Yes, well, it's the law of reciprocation. Something about being on someone else's podcast, especially when there's good energy.
Yeah.
I want those people on the Sales Made Easy podcast. And it's funny because not everyone has good energy. So for those of you I've been guested on your podcast and you haven't been on mine, don't put two and two together. I have not gotten around to it yet, but I will invite you in all likelihood. All right. So what's on your mind today, Doug? Are we talking sales? Because that's what this podcast is about. So what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, from an early age, my talent's always been the ability to develop teams. And so, although I wasn't a stellar individual salesperson, I worked hard, and that's kind of all you need to be a good salesperson. Most of the time you have somewhat average salespeople around you. If you just work a little harder, you'll get ahead, right?
I like it.
But what I figured out...
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're good. What I figured out early on was that if I develop a good system, and then I can put anybody into it and develop them into a salesperson versus going and looking for salespeople, right? And so that helped me out early in my career for sure.
Yeah. So, all right. So first of all, I'm going to go into that you weren't a stellar salesperson, but you worked hard.
Absolutely.
So what does that mean? Because I think sometimes people work hard and they still can't sell. And then, so talk to me about, you obviously sold some stuff over the years, right?
Well, I think a good salesperson is defined by their conversion rate, right? So if you go on 10 sales calls and you convert 5 of them, that's a high conversion rate. Average is probably about 3, and then maybe I was around 2, right?
Okay.
But I would just prospect so much that I went on like 15 sales calls, and I could work my way into average. And then in doing that, you get a lot more reps. You get a little better at your craft. You take a little more notes. You develop a little more, and then you get better. And maybe you'll turn into average, but I'm still going on 15 sales calls versus another salesperson that's going on 10, right? They may be closing 5, but I'm closing 5 also because I'm working harder. And then as I develop myself, I'm able to close even more than maybe a really good sales rep. So I think, defining a talented or somebody that is a natural born salesperson is very tough to do, but you can always do it with the numbers, right? And the conversion rate, I think, is where it's at on that.
Yeah. And you still have to actually develop some skills. So can we go back into your background a little bit as how you were, what it was in sales that you started with? If I could ask that question, right?
Absolutely. So like most of us entrepreneurs, we couldn't really find where we belonged early on in life. And so as I graduated high school, I followed a girl to Corpus Christi, Texas, knowing nobody there except her. And I probably worked anywhere from 10 to 15 different positions, mainly labor, busboy, refinery work. I worked in a factory. I did all that stuff. And probably about 90% of the jobs I had, I got fired from because I was always trying to develop a better system of doing it. I always saw the inefficiencies in the systems that we were using, and I try to develop new ones to do it faster, more efficient. And typically, in most companies, it's not a accepting attitude of somebody that wants to change things, right?
Right.
And so I didn't last long at a lot of places until I found working for another entrepreneur, and then he appreciated my ability to create systems or to refine them. And so that kind of like opened up my exposure to sales, which at the time was real estate. And I worked for the number one realtor in Corpus Christi, Texas. And so I got to see him develop relationships with clients in order to make sales, right? So he was a great networker, a keen relationship developer, and always knew how to maintain his relationships really well to where they always came back for repeat business, right? And so he was a rainmaker. That was my first exposure to that. I did marketing for him. So I managed the just listed postcards and signs and photography for 300 properties that he had listed at one time.
Okay.
And so he was a pretty big realtor, and that was kind of my first exposure to it, like I said. And then from there, I went on to work for another entrepreneur who had a boiler room, and they did collectible gold sales. So if you've seen the movie Boiler Room, it was very similar to that. And so that was my next exposure to sales. And I saw these guys, and they were making 150, 200 grand. And this was, 15 years ago. So, do the equation for inflation. And so that was really good money back then, right?
It's like $10 million now.
Right. And so I started listening to them. And as I listened to the conversations, I was like, man, I could do this. And so I was a marketing manager for them at the time, making 30 grand a year. And so I started asking them, hey, can I come in on evenings and weekends and pitch the cold leads? The old leads, the used up one, nobody wants to pitch, right? And that's kind of how I cut my teeth in sales, was over the phone, boiler room style, understanding the steps to a conversation and closing at the height of impulse, figuring out all those things. And then during that time, that entrepreneur that I worked for, he started another company called Argenta Field Solutions, which is my company now. And he gave me the opportunity to start managing it, and it was a door-to-door sales company. And so he asked me to start managing it, see if I can get it back to profit. And I was like, okay, let me give it a shot. And then 6 months later, we were in the black, right? He tried to sell it, didn't work out. So I ended up owner financing it from him for 200 grand. It was not worth 200 grand. It was an AT&T contract, that's the whole company, right? There was a few salespeople, but didn't really have any systems in terms of sales training and all that. I was developing them at that time. So one of the things that I recognized right away is, okay, I'm an okay salesperson. I can learn this and I can work my butt off and do well at it. Or I can take what I've learned, put it on paper, train other people on how to do it, and then train those people how to train other people on how to do it, right? And so as I put together those systems and processes, I also put together accounting systems and recruiting systems and bonus structures and everything that goes into supporting a sales organization. And I wore all the hats, right?
Yeah.
And as I developed in the company and as we started doing better, and I started recruiting more people, and I got up to 10 people, then I started promoting people to wear those hats, right? And then just kind of developed it from there. And we got all the, at our height, we were doing $5 million in commissions annually, and I had 110 salespeople working for me.
My goodness.
Yeah.
So you went from the guy that was working blue collar, looking for, his purpose, to working in a boiler room, which is a different type of boiler room from the factory, clearly. And then doing this, what kind of training did you have to start all of this, sales process and sales enablement and comp plans and so forth. Where did all this come from?
So I had no formal training. I didn't go to college. Even though I worked for these other entrepreneurs, by my standards today, they didn't have good systems in place, and they didn't have good structures, and they were wearing too many hats, right? Yeah. And by my standards today, like, I would have never ran my business like they did, right? And so what I recognized early on is I had a talent to build out the systems. If I didn't, so the first thing I did was knock doors for 3 months straight when I started managing the company. Yeah. And I was like, okay, what does it take to be a successful salesperson? Then at the end of that third month, I was closing about 6 to 7 deals a week, right? Nothing crazy, but it could earn you, $50,000 a year as a door-to-door salesperson, right? I was like, okay, I can work with that. That's the avatar that I need to support. And so my talent early on was the ability to develop the system. So I always saw that, I always saw the systems and everything. And that was kind of like what got me there. But then, as I got older and I started realizing, hey, I need education, I started, working with mentors and masterminds and stuff like that to teach me the stuff that I was missing, right? But for the longest time, it was very shoot from the hip. Let's try this. Oh, that didn't work. It was a hard knock early business education. You know what I mean? Accounts going zero, accounts going negative. You know what I mean? Not being able to make payroll, and then having $100,000 in the bank account, not knowing what to do with it. I mean, just roller coaster ride of my 20s.
Sounds amazing. So, what would you say would be a big lesson that you learned through that process?
And it was a lesson that my previous partner and the previous owner of the company taught me early on. He was like, if I could go back to school for anything, I would go back to school for accounting, because the money is where most entrepreneurs screw up. And I was lucky in that I was in a cash cow type business, to where if we needed money, we go out and make a bunch of sales, and then we'd have it the next week, right? Right. And so I got lucky in that I was involved in a business that could print money, basically. And even though I ran out a lot and didn't manage my finances very well, I was able to overcome that over the years, and that's another thing I always, tell my friends and stuff when they decide to start a business is they ask me for advice, and I just tell them, look, the best advice I can give you is just don't quit. Businesses, everybody says, oh, that business failed, or we went out of business. I don't really believe that. I think you just gave up. Now, giving up isn't necessarily always a bad thing. If it's not working, it's not working, right? Right. But at the end of the day, you said, I don't want to do this anymore. This isn't working for me. So I'm moving on to another business, or I'm taking the W-2 job back, whatever the case is. And I never had a real good reason to give up. Because I knew the next month I could make more money. I knew the next week, the next day, whatever the case is, because we're in commission sales. And so that would be my advice, is just don't give up. And that was the biggest thing that I would learn. And then also get your accounting on point, or hire someone that knows numbers, or bring them on as a partner into the company and put them at an executive level to manage the numbers and to have that accountability in place. That's something I'm working on right now. I'm putting a package together for a fractional CFO right now, because I need that person, that accountability, the one that's on top of the numbers all the time. Because at the end of the day, I'm good at running a sales organization, not doing the books.
Yeah, there's only so much one can do.
Absolutely, and I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy budgets and being told I can't spend more money. I love spending money, especially when it's on my people or my teams or my business. And so I always put it all back into the business when I should have been putting reserves in place. You know what I mean? Reserves and investments for the company, and, putting the future of the company first before all these cool things I wanted to do. Yeah, exactly. So the background, having some kind of accounting background, even though it wasn't there, finding someone to fill the void was helpful. And what trap would you say it will help prevent? Or the challenge trap, whatever the word is. I would say the celebration trap, right? Because we had a lot of good months. We hit a lot of records, you know, and I always felt like I had to over celebrate or over incentivize or over bonus my people. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there was one year we went to like 6 Dallas Cowboy games, and 3 of them we were in the suite, and the other 3 we were on the second or third row, right? Mm-hmm. And I just always felt like, hey, this is my team, and we've done really well, and I want to reward them. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so I always spent a ridiculous amount of money on them having fun. And if there was just a budget in place, you know, $2,000 a month for incentives, you know, something like that, then we would have been fine. But instead, I was spending $5,000 and $6,000 and $7,000 a month on what is it called?
A few hours of fun, right?
Entertainment and dining, I think, is the QuickBooks classification. That bill every month, my CPA, there's a big difference between a CPA and a bookkeeper, right? Yeah. And the CPA looks at your taxes retroactively typically. Now, they're a lot better now. They're more aggressive, and they do tax strategy, right? But the bookkeeper is the one like logging the reconciles every day and seeing what's coming in and what's going out. But they really aren't going to hold you accountable, right? Their job is to keep track of everything. So when my CPA saw that line item, he was just like, I don't spend that in 5 years on my company. And we do the same amount that you do. I'm like, well, I have a sales bit, you know, I would try to justify it and stuff like that. But if the numbers don't make sense, they don't make sense, you know?
Yeah, but your team loved you, I bet.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I bought loyalty for sure with that. You know what I mean? Instead of having a mission statement and core values and, you know, getting the right people, I just bought loyalty, you know, early in my career because I didn't know any better. You know, I said, I thought, oh, I have to do this stuff or they'll leave me, you know, that whole deal. And they left me anyways, right? Because I didn't have any purpose or mission in my company at the time. It was just about money and incentives, which only last for so long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. So what helped you to develop the purpose and mission then?
I would say joining the business network that I'm in. I joined about 18 months ago, or almost 2 years now that I've been really following it. And the network is called Apex. Ryan Stewman's the influencer that runs it. It's a mastermind, and there's over 1,800 people in it now, and there's different levels to it and everything. And it's one big club of entrepreneurs that support each other, you know? Okay. And they walk you through different systems and stuff that in order to develop your company. And one of those is developing a mission statement and core values. Yeah. And then being able to operate your company on that. And it's not just words on a wall, right? There are definitely words on my wall. We've got our mission statement and our core values up, but it's also how you operate, how you hire, how you fire, you know, and how you operate on a daily basis. Every meeting that we start begins with our mission statement and core values. And then throughout the meetings, we reference those things so we understand that, hey, that we are operating on this. And then, like most recently, I had to let go. I have 2 major divisions right now. One's for AT&T and one's for solar. Okay. And I had a director for AT&T that was no longer living out our core values, right? Okay. And so I had to cut him loose a couple weeks ago. And he was responsible personally for about 15% of the production in that division. And then he was managing the rest of the team, right? And so I had this huge leadership hole now there that I have to kind of like halfway fill. Luckily, that team was completely bought in on our core values, though. And they understood why I did it, and then they supported me. And then they all stuck, right? Because we know in sales, if the leader goes, a lot of times a few people go with them. Well, I didn't lose one salesperson because they believed in our core values.
Interesting. Do you mind sharing some of the core values that you have with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So our mission statement is we help each other achieve freedom, right? And, you know, it is the very cliche things like financial freedom, but also freedom of faith and freedom of your schedule and where you want to be, right? And so every position that we have in the company has unlimited vacation, right? They're typically sales, right? So you control your schedule. And so we really want to achieve that. And then our core values, just walking through them real quick, is we put the mission first. So that's a big one. So if you're ever doing anything against the mission, then we basically check you on that, or you get checked on that, right? Our second one is we operate with integrity. That's a big one. That's honestly why I had to cut the MDU director loose, because he wasn't operating in integrity in his personal life, and then he brought it into the business as well, you know. And that's one of the tough things is we live it and we work it, right? But it's very hard in a traditional workplace or a traditional work culture to say, hey, what you do at home matters too. You know what I'm saying? Because that bleeds over into the business end of things. It gets a lot easier once it does bleed over to cut it off, right?
Right.
But we want you to live these core values too, you know? And we want you to be inspired to live them at the very least, right?
Sure.
And so that's just a few of them. We work hard, we pray hard, right? So the old adage is we work hard, we play hard.
You're right. I thought you said pray.
Yeah, I did say pray. Yeah. And so I wanted to change it to pray because, you know, I'm a Christian and I talk about that, but I also don't like preach or anything like that. We just talk about the fact that we work hard, we pray hard, because we work hard, we play hard often ends in a net zero the next day, right? You go out, you make $1,000 in a day selling something, and then you go out that night, and typically what, you know, people that are younger than me do, and then even my age, go out to the bar or to the club or buy something, you know what I mean? And they call it, hey, I worked hard, I get to play hard now, you know?
Right.
But you end in a zero net sum. So what's the point? You know what I mean? Yeah. Versus making good choices with that money, taking care of your family, improving your legacy, investing, whatever the case is, and then being grounded in prayer, right? And so that's a big one. We don't make excuses. You know, it's very hard to change that culture because we have a culture in general of excuses in the U.S., right? Everybody's got an excuse for everything.
Seriously?
Yeah, I don't have time, you know, is the biggest one, right?
Yeah.
Well, you wake up at 7 a.m. and you're late to work every day, and, you know, you go out to lunch for an hour and a half, and then you come home and you watch Netflix for 2 hours. You know what I'm saying? Well, you have time. You just choose not to use it towards the thing that you're saying you don't have time for. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's one of the ones that we really work on when people come into our company is, hey, instead of giving me the excuse first, you know, accept that this thing happened, you know, whatever it was, you fell short, and then tell me how you're going to prevent it from happening again, you know? And so we train everybody, and we do it to ourselves too. Yeah. And we train everybody to do that. And the last one is we live in gratitude. That's a huge one for us. Every morning we post in our sales flow chat, which everybody sees, what we're grateful for. And we encourage everybody for it to be very simple, you know, or it can be, you know, this amazing thing, right? And so like mine this morning was, what was it this morning? I'm grateful for all the time I got with my family last weekend. You know, because I had spent so much of my 20s working and hustling, and I bought into the hustle culture. I had to work 78 hours a week to be successful, right? Right. And so now I have a completely different mindset, and a lot of times the contributions I make to my business are very minimal over the weekends. That's me and my family's time, right? And in the evenings as well. My business has a very limited time that it has me, and then I pretty much maintain those boundaries unless I'm on a work trip or something like that, you know. And so those are our long-winded version of the values.
Very nice.
Yeah.
How do you go about, you know, what does it look like where you're actually trying to implement where someone's not, where they're challenged in one of those areas? I mean, pick a challenge and then say, okay, so they're not living up to the standards we have. They're not working. I mean, can you really go on? I mean, I'm just being the devil's advocate here. Can you go on the personal standards, or do you have to wait until they bring in the problem where it becomes a work issue?
So I'm very lucky that I'm part of that Apex network. So I went to I think it was about 6 months ago. I went to Cabo on a mastermind trip, right? They rent out these beautiful mansions, and it's really expensive to go. They fly you out there private, you know what I mean? And so it kind of filters out who all goes, right? And so you're around business owners with minimum, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million businesses, right? And then all the way up to $100 million, right? And so, being on the lower end of that spectrum, you're automatically like getting way more value than you paid for. You know what I'm saying? And so I definitely took advantage of that
through osmosis.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And so, we did a mastermind one morning. We're overlooking, I think it's San Pedregal Bay, and it's this beautiful, beautiful bay and just beautiful homes everywhere, right? And rolling mountains and stuff. And we're at this mastermind, and Ryan Stewman asks us, "What is your BAP? What is your big ass problem?" Right? And so mine has always been, or was at the time, I'm very good at recruiting entry-level people. If you can walk and chew gum, I can recruit you to my company and teach you how to sell, and you can be successful here, right? Very good at that. It's a volume game, lots of turnover, especially in door-to-door or in commission sales in general, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm very good at running those systems. But I'm 36 now. I've been doing this for 12 years, and I'm tired. You know what I mean? I want to make more impact with less people, right? And so I told him, I need to figure out how to hire elite closers or elite salespeople or just elite people in general. Now, this could be somebody that's 22 years old, but just has the right mindset and has their head on right. You know what I'm saying? But typically what I'm saying is like late 20s, early 30s, has experience, is a six-figure earner, and I want to recruit them to my company, right?
Yeah.
And so I asked him, I was like, how do you do that? Because he's got probably 26-figure earners at his company, and just these people that he has working for him are amazing, right?
Okay.
And so the first thing he told me is you have to be the example, right? In everything you do, they have to want to be you. Now, I don't mean like physically. I don't mean like your swag or attitude. They have to want to be the father that you are. They have to want to be the business owner that you are. They have to want to be the human that you are. And if, you know what I mean, they value integrity and they value the things that I just said, then they're going to be attracted to you one way or the other. And so the first thing you have to do is be that example. So the same thing with the core values, right? And when I look at my leadership team, I have to make sure that when I tell them, hey, we're going to operate in integrity, that I'm operating in integrity, not just in the business, not just in the balance sheet, but also at home when I'm with my kids, when I'm with my fiance, and making sure that I'm doing exactly what I'm asking them to do, right? So the first thing is be the example so it happens naturally. You'll see people, over the last year, I've seen people on my team that have been with me a year or more change their lives and change their lives or change their families generationally because they just had a mindset shift and they've been exposed to what I've been exposed to because I'm exposing them to it, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the first piece, but that's also not a proactive piece. It's like you said, how do you enforce these things, right? And so the next thing that we do is we take advantage of the tools that were given to us by that Apex network. And the first tool is the G code, right? And it's at dailygcode.com. It's a super simple website. You save it to your phone desktop, right? And it basically asks you, what are you grateful for today?
Okay.
Right? And then the next thing it asks you is, what did you accomplish today? Did you work out? Did you stick to your diet? And then what did you learn today? And then I think there's like one more thing. And you can get a total of 4 points on this, right? And so what I did is I instituted it in the company. And so we have our metrics that we keep track of, cost per hire, how many sales, AT&T products we sold that week, how many kilowatts of solar we sold that week. And then under that is, all right, Wayne, what's your G code score? Doug, what's your G code score? Cheyenne, right? Robert, basically my leadership team, they're right under these important metrics that everybody would understand as business owners is these G code metrics. So basically I'm adopting that lifestyle to the company as well. And then they're participating in it, right? And you see some friction the first few weeks, but as soon as they see their name next to that number, something triggers. And it's like, oh, I don't want to be the one that got less than 20 points this week, right? So if you get 3 points a day, if you don't eat right every day and you at least work out, you can still get 21 points in a week, right? So they either pick one or the other. They work out or they eat right, And so all of a sudden your leadership team is getting healthier, losing weight, right? And they're improving their lifestyles. And they're also like, we're less quick to anger when we come from a grateful place. We're less quick to angry thinking when we come from a grateful place, and we tend to kind of see through the problems versus get stuck in them, right?
Yeah.
And
I like it.
That's a really, really cool tool that we use. And then another one, actually, this wasn't created by Apex. It was created by Andy Frisella, CEO of First Form, 75 Hard. And so that's a mental toughness program that about 6 of my people are on right now that I've completed. I've completed phase 1 and I start phase 2 in like a month after I get remarried.
Okay.
Long story there. But
all right.
After I get remarried, I'm going to start phase 2. And so they see me, I'm leading the way, you know what I mean? Already in phase 2 and they're trying to complete 75 hard, And so again, you be the example and you use the tools that are given to you. And a lot of times they will naturally follow that. Now, that's not to say that they have to, because if they don't, that doesn't mean they can't live a healthy lifestyle. Doesn't mean they can't be grateful every day. But you can, when you have a tool to do it versus when you're supposed to remember to do it by yourself, it's a whole nother deal, right? And that's pretty rare. So the pack separates itself.
Yeah, I like that. So do people, when they work with you, did they already know this going in that you're this kind of maniac, or did you have conversations after and you said, look, guys, I got news for you. When I say maniac, it's completely tongue in cheek, by the way.
No, I know.
But if, because I can't imagine if you had some, no offense to the chain smokers out there, some chain smoking, heavy drinker, overweight person that says, what? No, not a chance. I'm a great closer, baby.
Yeah.
You get me for who I am. So, I mean, obviously you probably didn't have any of those types of people on your team anyway, right?
Well, yeah, I had a few, right?
Okay.
And so when we started instituting this stuff, it was probably about 18 months ago, right? And it was one of those things like, oh yeah, Doug's on another one of his ideas, right? And then they saw me start instituting it, right? And I realized, hey, I'm gonna put this out there. I'm gonna put it on social media. I'm gonna put it on the company calls. I'm gonna invite everybody to go on this journey with me. Yeah. And then if they come, they come, right? I'm not gonna be a hard ass about this, right?
Yeah.
And then what I saw happen was, at first it was novel and they appreciated it and everything, but they weren't gonna do it. And then over time, I saw the company culture change to where they were doing it with me. My leadership team was jumping on. And so my minority partner, Wayne Skinner, he when he joined the company, and this was over 10 years ago, he was over 400 pounds.
Oh my goodness. So I had no idea when I was bringing this up.
Yeah. He amazing man, amazing father, a man of God, right? Yeah. And so in the last 10 years, he's lost about 100 pounds or so, but he's kind of hit that plateau where it's like something's got to change, right? And so he, I believe, is on day 68 of 75 hard and has lost another like 60, 70 pounds since he started, or since like a year ago. He just started 75 hard recently, which is responsible for most of that. But his relationship with his wife has gotten better. His relationship with his family has gotten better. Him and his wife are working out together. You know what I'm saying? It's completely changing their family dynamic. And so he is like right there with me in terms of leadership, right? And then a bunch of my staff are on 75 hard too. So even though like when they were hired, it wasn't like, hey, we're all about these missions and these core values and these tools. The ones that were about that stayed on and executed, right? So now that we're on this big recruiting push, we talk about these things in the interview.
Sure. Yeah.
So we filter out the people that aren't about it early on, you know what I'm saying? And then what happens, of course, everybody says, yes, you know, they interview great. They talk about development, that they're all about it and everything. And then in the first 30 days, they don't do any of it. And they either weed themselves out or their production isn't there. So we have a conversation and we asked, hey, are you using these tools that we've given you? No, I'm not using them. Okay, well, core values don't align. No big deal.
Sure.
You may be successful at another company, but probably not a good fit for this one. So then we part ways, you know?
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful thing about it. It makes the core values the bad guy. You know what I mean? Which they're not the bad guy. They're really the good guy, but like you get to blame it. Two things are responsible for us not working together, right? Either core values or the system, right? And so oftentimes if it's the system, we'll improve the system. That way we can continue to work together, especially if the core values are aligned.
What would be, I mean, is it just typically that people are not working is the issue when they're not succeeding? I mean, what is it in your business?
It's typically because they're not planning to win, right? So what happened, a typical salesperson gets up in the morning, has their coffee, has their morning ritual. Maybe they even work out, right? And then they have time slots for certain things, prospecting. Maybe they have time slots, right? But typically what most salespeople do is they're reactive to the day. You know what I mean? Oh, I got these emails. I'm going to go through all my emails, right? And then I'm going to make my calls. And then it's 1 o'clock and they're still not through all their emails because they're putting out little fires or they're doing projects or
I'm too busy.
They're following
I'm too
up.
busy with all the minutia.
I'm not closing anything, but I'm super busy, right? Doing customer maintenance or whatever the case is.
If service did their job, I wouldn't have to do any of this.
Exactly, right? And so all
I've never heard that.
It's 2 o'clock. They've had a 6-hour workday and lunch. They took an hour and a half lunch, right?
Yeah.
And they haven't done any prospecting, right? So typically they're not executing properly. It's not that they're not working; they're working, but they're just reactive to the day versus having specific time blocks for every piece of their schedule every day. It's customer service from 8 to 10. Once 10 hits, that's it. I got to maintain my integrity. And I've got to move on to prospecting from 10 to 12 and then lunch, right? And it's not, you know, oh, well, it took me 15 minutes to get to the lunch spot. And so I'm going to take an hour here and then 15 minutes back, you know, and then it's an hour and a half. I have an hour for lunch and then boom, 1 o'clock, I'm visiting current clients till 2:30 or 3, and then I'm back on prospecting from 3 to 5. The ones that I didn't get in the morning, I'm going to get in the afternoon. Right. And so keeping that schedule, you know, whatever the case may be, using their tools and then staying aligned with what they said they were going to do is where I see a lot of salespeople succeed. And again, it's not that they're not working. They're just doing the easy work. Let's be honest. Right. They're doing the customer service stuff. They're doing if I don't talk to this customer for half an hour today, I'm going to lose the deal. You know what I mean? Versus respecting their time, and the customers will fall in line accordingly.
Sure.
You know what I mean? You can train a customer to respect your time, you know?
Yeah. So it seems like it's pretty unanimous throughout whoever I speak to. I mean, having been in sales forever myself, it comes down to talking to strangers.
Absolutely.
If you don't want to talk to strangers, then, you know, you can have the best clients in the world, but they can only buy so much from you. I mean, it's great that you know everything about them and that they keep buying from you. That's awesome. But in order to grow beyond that, it comes down to making new friends. And that's just a real challenge for a lot of people.
Yeah. And they get stuck on titles. I think calling someone an account manager, you know, is always tough because they take the management part too seriously. When you're really, you know, we have internal titles and then we have external titles, right? Our internal title for our solar specialist is closer.
Yeah. Okay.
So internally, when we talk about that position, it's closer. But when, customer facing, it's solar specialist. Because they don't, hey, my closer will be there in 10 minutes.
Right. Probably
Like,
not relatable.
that's probably not relatable, right? And so I think when they hear a title like account manager, subconsciously they have that manager in the back of their, instead of salesperson. You are a salesperson. You are a prospector. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like your job is to bring in new reoccurring revenue to the business, and if reoccurring, you have to sign up another person next month. If that's what that means, then that's what that means, right? But you're absolutely right. It's talking to strangers.
Yeah.
And then there's the 20, so I always like the 60-20-20, right? So 60% of my time is prospecting, 20% is managing accounts, and then 20% is getting referrals from existing accounts, right? And a lot of times the managing the referral goes hand in hand, So you can mix and match there, and one feeds the other. But you really got to spend at least 60% of your time prospecting.
So how long, I know I'm getting granular here, but how long should someone hold on to somebody that's really not, sticking with the schedule and they're coming up with the excuses? How many warnings do you give? And, when do you go back to the core values and say, yeah, you're probably going to be more successful somewhere else?
I hate to be cliche here, but it's kind of the 3-strike rule for me. And the problem is there's so many variables. You kind of just have to have a very general rule like that, right? But when Yeah,
you know early, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, you
really
do.
We keep giving. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm talking over you.
No, you're good. The first time you give them the corrective action, if they don't immediately own up to it and then start instituting that corrective action, that's typically your sign.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And too many of us as managers and as humans, we try to save people, right? And I have done so much better when I cut them loose fast because they weren't willing to do the work, right?
Yeah.
And then they come back to me a couple months later and they say, hey, you were right.
You get there?
And I don't take any pride in that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I just have a system. We got to follow the system. We got to make sure the core values stay aligned. And if anything falls outside of that, we're going to cut it off, right? Because we want this to be, I don't want this to sound the wrong way. We want this to stay pure, right?
Yeah.
I'd rather have 10 people that we all align and we have a goal of a greater impact, that goal of achieving freedom and creating legacy for our families, right? Versus 100 people and like 50 of us have that goal. Yeah. And the other 50 are just numbers on a board. You know what I'm saying? I'd much rather have the 10 that we're all aligned and moving towards those bigger impact goals, achieving freedom and creating a legacy for our families. Because it is, you show up happy to work every day. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And most days I show up to my office. I have Ryan, my producer for my podcast, on my left. He's my media guy too, gets all the content and everything. And the office is empty because my main offices are in Corpus Christi and Houston with, we have a lot more people. People that are in San Antonio, they work remote. But I showed up fired up every day because anytime I have a conversation, whether it's with Harry or it's with, one of my MDU guys, Robert, we're on the same page because we talk about it every day. Achieve freedom and the core values. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you're on fire every day.
Yeah, so good. This has been a blast. We could go on for a whole lot longer here. I've got more questions, but yes, this is great. And I just totally can empathize with the mindset of giving people the chance. I mean, I've always looked at it. I have a harder time sleeping tonight knowing what the next day was going to bring for that person than they do, right? They're sleeping like babies.
Yeah.
But they, it's just the way it is, right? If you're a person that wants people to succeed, you don't want, sometimes the answer is they're just better off somewhere else. And it could be a different industry, it could be whatever, right? But that's okay.
And as long as you have an abundance mindset, you can sleep at night, right? Because like when I cut loose my MDU director, I set him up with his own contract with AT&T. He's been doing this with me for 6 years. You know what I'm saying? I know it's his livelihood. I know this is all he knows how to do. So I set him up with his own contract for AT&T. We're in the same market. You know what I'm saying? Like, we could be competing over the same complexes someday, but I don't really care about that part.
Yeah.
You know, as long as we're staying true to our mission, then that the success will come. There's no limit of success out there, no matter how many other companies there are like me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And
True.
And he's going to, I hope long term he appreciates that. And, you know, if we do run into something like that, like, he has grace, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then I have grace on my end and we can figure it out, right?
Yeah. Beautiful. All right, Doug Mitchell, thanks for making a great appearance and bringing the value here on the Sales Made Easy podcast. Where can people find more of your outstanding wisdom?
All I'm doing is duplicating the things that I've been taught, honestly.
Yeah.
So
I love the humility, but
Yeah.
you know, when you're doing it, that's very wise in itself. Even though you may be duplicating, there's huge value in that as well. So talk to me. Where are we finding you?
txbizdad.com. All my social media links will be on there. And then most of my social media accounts are at txbizdad.
All right. Good deal. It's great having you, man. Keep on firing. You're not firing. Keep on hiring. Keep on with your great core values. It's firing in all cylinders. I don't know where that came from. But
It's all good. I appreciate you having me, brother.
all right, man. It's great stuff.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Building Great Sales Teams. We sure do appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you consume podcasts. This way you'll get notifications as new episodes become available. Remember, great sales teams are not recruited. They are built block by block. Until next time.